So you might have heard me talk about strengths a lot recently, and I appreciate it's all very well talking about the idea of strengths in abstract terms. So I wanted to take a moment to share my personal experiences with you, and actually to share my Strengthscope report with you as well, and share some of the surprising things that I discovered when I did it. Now, I'll briefly explain why I did it. Look, over the years, I've done lots of different roles. I've done some very varied roles over the years, and as a result, I've had to be good at doing lots of things. I've developed a lot of competencies because it's what the job needed. You know what it's like when you've got something to do, the job needs to get done, and so you just work out a way to do it. Personally, I found that I find it quite difficult now to distinguish between the things that I'm good at because I've had to do them, and the things that I'm good at because they really inspire me and I'm really energised by them and I enjoy them. And maybe some people find that easy. I found it quite difficult when I'm describing to other people what I do, the things that really set me alight. So I underdid the Strengthscope report and the coaching session in order to help me distinguish and discover those things and be better at picking out the things that really work for me. So I completed the report. I answered a lot of questions to get the profile. I got some feedback from other people and I got my report back. So here are 5 things I want to share with you that I found surprising. Now, the first one was I had self-development come up as a strength. So you get your significant 7 strengths when you do the report. You get them on a nice wheel like this. So the purple ones are my significant 7, and personal development came up as mine. And now that really changed the way I think about strengths or my strengths, because I'd never really thought of personal development as a strength before. I understand how it benefits me, but I'd never really stopped to think about how it might work for me or benefit other people. But actually recently I have been getting some really good feedback about how I've added value to either people or businesses, but because when I work on myself, I learn new things, I develop new skills, and of course in my own business I can sell those to others or add value to other people. So it makes sense when I think about it, but I was really surprised to see that. I'd never really thought about personal development as a strength. The second thing I found surprising was that, if you notice it here, empathy came up as one of my significant 7 strengths. Now, that really surprised me because I never really thought of empathy as being a strength before. When I told other people what I've discovered on the report and what I've been learning, they were surprised that I was surprised. They would say, yeah, Michelle, definitely empathy would be one of your strengths. Why were you surprised by that? And I think in the past, whenever I've done profiles or used tools before, they tend to use dichotomies or different ends of a scale, and I've always come up on the thinking end of the scale as opposed to the feeling end. So while empathy, I suppose, has been there, it's never really been something that's come up. Actually, when I stop to think about it, empathy is a strength. It's very important to me in terms of what I do. As you can imagine, it's crucial for coaching and for training. I just never really thought about it. What's really interesting, of course, is that strengths are not just what you're good at. This is more about what energises you, what you're naturally drawn to, and what you're inspired by. And as I was doing the coaching session talking about empathy, I realised just how important that part is to me. And it really made me think about some of the roles I've done in the past where that bit's been removed, where you need to get the job done, you don't really get a chance to connect and empathise with people at the end. The third thing that I picked up, and it's kind of related to that, as I say, I've done profile tools before, and they've put you on a sort of dichotomy on a scale between maybe thinking and feeling, or detail, or big picture thinking. And of course, all of those tools, they're very good, I've used them myself, do allow for you to have both things or to meet in the middle. But because I've always come out very clearly at one end of the scale, I've always thought about myself in terms of being very logical, very practical, and probably not thought about some of the emotional stuff before. So for something like empathy to come up, actually that's not a surprise. With strengths, they can be complementary. You can have 2 things. It's not one or the other. So Dave Harrison was the trainer. He picked up that quite quickly. I said I'd had feedback before. I saw myself as a big picture person and people were telling me I was good at detail. And he said, well, actually not mutually exclusive. You can be good at both. So what was quite useful is to know that just because you're good at one thing, there may be another strength that doesn't necessarily seem complementary, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't interest you, engage you, or inspire you. no strengths are mutually exclusive, and that's something I really liked about this, and it really prompted me to think a little bit differently. I'm also thinking about strengths in overdrive. So that's the term we use when your strengths become a weakness. So when I was doing my coaching and training session, people were saying, "Oh, strengths, emotional control," which also came up as one of my strengths. Wouldn't it be good to be good at that? That's a good thing to have in a professional environment. And my whole life, I've always believed that to be true. It is good to have a good emotional control, particularly when the pressure is on. But over the years, I have, actually recently, I've started to reflect on it and think, well, actually, these things may be strengths, but if we use them too much, they become a weakness. If we rely on them too much, which is easy to do because they come naturally to us, they're tried and tested techniques or methods for us, they're the way we cope with things quite naturally. They serve a good purpose, but we tend to just go to them without thinking. And more recently, I've been starting to think that emotional control is probably a bad thing when I do it in the wrong places. So yes, it's great, I can stay very calm and composed, but it means I probably don't tell people when I'm struggling, and I probably don't let on when I'm not happy or I'm finding something difficult. I think I'm telling people, but people who know me quite well, or I think they know me quite well, are really surprised sometimes when I tell them how I really feel. So I absolutely recognise that too much emotional control works against me. The same as resilience. I was thinking about resilience is another strength, one of my significant 7. And again, I love to be in the hot seat, but I love a bit of pressure, but I also recognise that in the past, perhaps I've chased that a little bit too much, relied on that a little bit too much, and it's got me into situations which can be quite stressful. And I think the final thing that I found both surprising and pleasing when I did my Strengthscope report and training was just really beginning to understand what I am passionate about. So when I was having my coaching session with the lovely Rachel Lewis, she was talking to me about my significant 7 strengths, and I just heard myself as I was describing them. I just felt myself come alive. As I heard the words coming out of my mouth, I could tell that my body language got a bit more animated, there was a bit more energy, there was a real enthusiasm there, which doesn't exist when I'm talking about things I'm good at or I think are important, but don't really feel that inspired by. So just the act of talking it through with somebody else and just observing myself and having them observe and coach me really did help me start to pick out what it is that I am passionate about and what my real strengths are, which was the purpose for me of doing the coaching. It's quite useful as well. The other thing I got in my report was a little bit of guidance on other things as well. So there's plenty of information I got about where strengths might be useful. There's some really useful coaching questions I got, which I'm working my way through now. And with the dial, you also get a little bit of feedback about your strengths in overdrive and where they might cause you to come up short. What I've never really thought about before is what I'm good at, or my strengths or my passions, and how I can do more of those. If I look at my wheel, what becomes quite clear to me, I think, is that the stuff under the detail, the thinking, I can do that stuff, but it's not really a passion of mine. If you look at my wheel, that quarter is missing, and that really got me thinking about whether or not that is something I should maybe delegate to others and just focus on what works for me. So there we go, a few surprising things. I've done loads of coaching tools before, I've used various profiles, and I've got value from all of them. I'm not going to bang the drum about one in particular. What I liked about this, it was different, and at this point in time, it was something that I really needed and found really useful. If you'd like to know more, get in touch. If you want to ask me any questions about how I found it, has it been useful, has it got me different results, feel free to let me know. And of course, if you want any coaching or yourself, or you want to do your own Strengthscope profile, get in touch and I'll be more than happy to talk you through it.